right, welcome to Fox 5 special coverage of the presidential takeover of Washington, D.C. This is night 5 of Donald Trump's federal takeover of the nation's capital. It's also the first Friday night, and that is key because it is the first night of the expanded juvenile curfew that is happening down in Navy Yard. I'm going to take you to a live look here in just a second. That's a live look. The bottom right corner, that is a live picture from one of our Fox 5 photographers down in Navy Yard. I'll take you there full. You see some flashing lights off in the distance. You can expect a heavier police presence tonight as part of that expanded juvenile curfew. If this is your first time joining us, basically what we're doing is taking you live across the city as things happen, if they are happening, during this federal show of force, let's call it. But we're also giving you a little recap of what has happened over the course of the last 24 hours. If you were watching last night, we ended our special coverage with a little breaking news from the Department of Justice. Attorney General Pam Bondi had announced that she was installing the head of the DEA as Emergency Police Commissioner, essentially replacing DC's Police Chief Pamela Smith as the head of the Metropolitan Police Department. Now, DC's Attorney General Brian Schwab and DC Mayor Muriel Bowser immediately responded, calling the action an attempt at a hostile takeover and a violation of DC's home rule. Now, the Attorney General filed a lawsuit first thing this morning seeking a temporary restraining order and basically challenging this overreach, as they called it, of DC's home rule. Still taking a live look down in the Navy Yard neighborhood of Southeast DC right now. So right around 5 o'clock today, we learned that a deal had been reached. I mentioned the Attorney General filing that lawsuit. Supposed to be in court at 2 p.m., but around 5 o'clock we learned that a deal had been reached. A judge seemingly agreed with DC's leaders that it was an overreach by the Department of Justice. He ordered both sides to negotiate an agreement. That deal, DC Police Chief Pamela Smith will remain in charge of the DC Police Department, and the DC Police Department would continue to work with the federal government under the president's executive order. Those executive orders coming out on Monday, the president putting the DC Police Department under federal control and also sending the National Guard in. There was supposed to be a National Guard press conference at 10 o'clock this morning. It actually ended up getting canceled, but we did get some new details about that deployment, which I'll bring to you in just a little bit. As we're taking this live look down in Navy Yard, you see another police SUV just pulled up, flashing lights, but no major issues that we know of right now. Getting back to that lawsuit, after the deal was reached, Attorney General Brian Schwab and the mayor spoke to the media. They took some questions. I do want to let you listen into that right now.
I'm Brian Schwab, DC Attorney General. I'm here with Mayor Muriel Bowser. As all of you know, this morning we filed a lawsuit here in the Federal District Court to enjoin the attempted hostile takeover of our police department. As we set forth in our papers in the court, we made clear that under the Home Rule Act, the authority to appoint a chief of police sits squarely with the mayor, and that the right to control the local policing of our city sits with the mayor and the chief of police, notwithstanding the government, the president, and the attorney general's efforts to suggest that they had taken control of our police force and put somebody in to run our police force. I'm very gratified that the judge today recognized that that is flagrantly illegal, that it violates the clear language of the Home Rule Act, and that for all intents and purposes, the chief of police remains the chief of police. Pamela Smith, appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the council, remains the chief of police for the District of Columbia in command and control of the more than 3,100 professional officers that work for MPD. My sincere hope is that we don't have to be back fighting over this issue again. The government, the federal government, recognizing that the judge was going to have to make a ruling on this issue, actually withdrew and said that they're going to rewrite the language that suggested that the the person from the DEA was running the police department, which was illegal and clearly not going to happen. So the key for today is to know that our effort to avoid a hostile takeover of our police force is not going to happen. Chief Smith remains in control of the police department under the supervision of our mayor. Very important win for home rule today.
I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. I am pleased to stand with our Attorney General, Brian Schwab, and his capable team at the Office of the Attorney General, as well as members of my team. We are grateful for the hard work that was done when we received an order late into the evening, yesterday evening, that we read as plainly against the Home Rule Charter. Our teams worked throughout the night. The judge herself commented on the hard work that was done and presented in the cases made. And I am encouraged by the judge's remarks and the federal government making the changes that were suggested, and the judge's willingness to rule if that's not satisfactory. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take about public sense. My expectation is that the key issue with respect to control and command of our MPD has been resolved today, and that it is clear as a matter of law that it is under the chief of police appointed by the mayor.
Hey, Brian, Bob Barnard over here from Fox 5. Are you concerned at all that when President Trump gets wind of what the judge ruled, he's going to come right back and do it again?
Look, all we can do as local officials elected and accountable to the residents of the District of Columbia is to stand up for home rule in our law. Even the President of the United States, even the Attorney General of the United States needs to comply with the law. And the Home Rule Charter and the Home Rule Act is very clear with respect to when the President can request limited services of MPD, limited by time, limited by emergency circumstances, and limited for federal purposes. And in all cases, those services must be requested to the mayor to be provided by the chief of police, not a hostile takeover of our police. And if it means standing up to the president, standing up to the attorney general to ensure that the laws of our country are followed, we will do that. My hope is that we do not have to be back here relitigating it. Our local law enforcement has worked collaboratively with federal law enforcement from time immemorial. This is nothing new, and it's part of what the residents of the District of Columbia deserve is a cohesive law enforcement effort, MPD with our federal enforcement partners. We don't need a hostile takeover from the federal government to do what we do every day. And my hope is we can get past this and get back to doing the hard work of continuing to drive crime down in our city, because any crime in our city is too much. We have to continue to be focused on that, and my hope is that we put that to bed today.
Mr. Attorney General, Madam Mayor, what's your expectation of what happens with both the homeless in the district and people without status? Do they both need to be worried that DC police are now enforcing rules that prior to this they've not been?
Look, we know that the law under the Home Rule Act allows the federal government during a course of an emergency to request the services of MPD in furtherance of a federal purpose. And whether it's clearing encampments that are adjacent to or near federal land or that might interfere with federal employees, if it's enforcement of immigration laws that are under the federal, we will have to confront that as it comes. We have made very clear, we have made very clear that we have laws in our city and that the services that MPD provides in furtherance of a request from the president, those services must comply with the law.
Mr. Attorney General, Luke Barr with ABC News. Are you, over here, are you surprised, can you, first of all, take us inside, right here, Mr. Can you take us inside the negotiations with the Justice Department? It was a prolonged negotiation. What was that, what were those conversations like? And then for the mayor, were you surprised to see the Attorney General's memo and executive order last night, given the sort of what appeared to be cooperation between federal and state authorities?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the confidential settlement discussions and negotiations that went on today.
We were surprised. I think you know that we reached out immediately to the Attorney General as the President's designee We had a productive meeting. She described it as a productive meeting. And without notice, we got the order.
Derek Roback from NBC News here. Are you concerned about potentially escalating tensions between the federal agents and D.C. residents as we go into this weekend?
What we know is that DC residents are worried and concerned, and we have a surge of federal officers. Chief Smith's job during this week has been to make sure that if we have and while we have federal officers, that they are being used strategically. And while we aren't controlling them, we do have the ability to influence how they're being deployed.
Mayor Bowser.
Thanks. No more questions. Thank you, everybody.
So that was DC's Attorney General Brian Schwab and DC Mayor Muriel Bowser earlier today reacting to the ruling out of a DC court, that Chief Pamela Smith would remain in charge of the DC Police Department, and that the Department of Justice Attorney General Pam Bondi had overextended their authority under the president's recent executive actions. Right now, you are taking a live look down at Navy Yard, that show of force, that police presence that they talked about. You can see that because tonight is the first night of the extended juvenile curfew down there in Southeast, in the Navy Yard neighborhood. It started at 8 p.m., goes to 11 p.m. The citywide juvenile curfew still in effect as well. That goes from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. Now, we talked about Attorney General Pam Bondi earlier this evening. After that court hearing, she issued a new memo directing DC police to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement, quote, notwithstanding city law. She also posted this tweet you see on the screen right now. I have just issued a new directive to Mayor Bowser requiring MPD to provide the services found necessary by my designee, DEA Headquarter Administrator Terry Cole, to comply fully and completely with federal immigration law and authorities, regardless of any policies MPD might otherwise have. Unfortunately, the DC Attorney General continues to oppose our efforts to improve public safety in Washington, D.C. It is important to note that this same DC Attorney General is responsible for failing to enforce consequences for dangerous juvenile offenders. We remain committed to working closely with Mayor Bowser, who is dedicated to ensuring the safety of residents, workers, and visitors in Washington, D.C. Taking a live look down at Navy Yard again, you see the flashing lights. So far, we have not heard of any major issues or any other shows of force happening in Washington, D.C. right now. We're talking about the mayor back from Martha's Vineyard. Remember, she had left the city for a little more than 24 hours. She had a family commitment there. She is back in D.C. now, was back this afternoon. Oh, now we're taking a live look at some of those federal agents, those federal officers, law enforcement down in Navy Yard as well with the masks on. I saw HSI, which is Homeland Security. I saw FBI. Remember, this is live from our photographers. This is a little raw. What you see and what you hear is happening live in real time. We'll do our best to keep you informed of what's going on, but right now you see those federal agents on the street corner. This is down in Navy Yard in Southeast DC, where the juvenile curfew is in effect. In the meantime, there have also been some major updates in the effort to dismantle some of the homeless encampments across the city. That is one of the other major parts of the president's executive action. He has called to make the nation's capital safe again. He also says he wants to make the nation's capital beautiful again. Last night, our crews were live down in Washington Circle, remember? And it appeared that there was a standoff between some people who were living on the street and some of the federal agents who had shown up. Those federal agents eventually left, not taking any specific action. However, crews were back this morning breaking down those tents and trashing what is left. That is the video you see in the top left-hand corner. The bottom right, still that live picture of the federal show of force and the DC police down in Navy Yard. That's where right now the juvenile curfew is in effect. The extended juvenile curfew is in effect, I should say. Top left, the homeless encampments over at Washington Circle being broken down earlier this morning. Now, the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services reacted to that action this morning, saying in a statement the district had scheduled engagement to close the site at Washington Circle on August 18th. That's 3 days from now. However, today, federal officials chose to execute the closure at the site and several others. Ahead of anticipated federal actions, the district has been proactively working with residents experiencing homelessness to connect them to shelter and services. The district has and continues to offer transportation to shelter, storage of items, access to behavioral health and/or medical care, case management, and connection to other services as needed. In many cases, we've been able to help residents accept offers of shelter. Impacted Washingtonians who seek shelter will not be turned away as DC is able to expand shelter capacity as needed. DC will continue to support residents with wraparound social services, but the planned engagements are otherwise the purview of the federal agencies. Now, one of the people that we talked to last night was back out today and spoke to our Stephanie Ramirez. Take a listen.
And I saw one officer come over, and I was like he was like trying to look into the tent. He was like, "Excuse me, that's mine. Like, can I help you?" And he's like, "You need to leave. Like, this is all getting cleared out right now. Like, pack it up and go."
Pack it up and go, you heard. Taking a live look back in Navy Yard again. You see a lot of people strolling around. There is a baseball game tonight. The Nationals taking on the Phillies. You see a lot of Nationals hats on people, and you also see a lot of DC police officers out and about. Now, going back to the homeless encampment, since President Trump's March executive order was signed, more than 70 homeless encampments have been removed by the U.S. Park Police. Yesterday, the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services had said there were about 60 remaining. Now, let's get back to the federal show of force. The agents out and about across the city last night, they said that it was going to be more of a targeted enforcement. And this morning, FBI Director Kash Patel provided an update on those ongoing enforcement efforts. He says last night officials made 18 arrests, recovered 8 firearms. He says agents also made multiple illegal drug seizures. Kash Patel says since the president's order on Monday to make DC safe again, there have been 120 arrests. Now, the White House also posted some video of some of those arrests as they went down. Take a look.
Coming down!
So that was the video the White House posted earlier showing the arrest of at least one person that we know of, which was the suspected Subway sandwich thrower, who was reportedly a now former DOJ employee. He was fired after that incident, according to Attorney General Pam Bondi. Now you're taking a live look once again down in Navy Yard, where a juvenile curfew is currently in effect. You see DC police out and about. You also see lots of people milling around. There is a Washington Nationals game tonight. They're hosting the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, in addition to the federal show of force and what's happening at the homeless encampments, we had the court hearing today that we talked about. There were also protests happening across the city as well. Around 12:30, members of the Free DC organization were outside of MPD headquarters. They were also outside of the courthouse where that hearing was happening. You see, that's the video in the top left corner. This was from the Fox 5 Live Zone, which aired that rally live. Before the court ruling, this happened. Members of the Free DC organization, like I said, rallied outside of MPD headquarters. Dozens of people marched. They held signs and even chanted, DC is ours. I'll let you take a listen here as well.
Whose streets? Whose streets? That's the exact reason why we need statehood. Y'all, we need DC statehood because these are our streets and our elected leaders should be making the decisions for our people. We don't need anybody from the White House to Congress telling us what to do right here in DC. We elected these to make the decisions for us, guys. The time is now that they have full autonomy to be the decision makers for what we are facing right now in our nation's capital. The rest of the world is looking at us, guys. The rest of the world has their eyes on DC. And our eyes are on the prize. And the prize is DC statehood. One more time, the prize is DC statehood. Because we are no longer standing in the backgrounds of Congress or the White House's actions that dehumanize the residents of Washington, D.C., specifically our inner city youth. Our inner city youth right now is being targeted, guys. This is a black and brown city. When I say chocolate, y'all say city. Chocolate? Chocolate? Don't forget it. This is a black and brown city, guys, and we must stand up and protect our inner city youth. And the only way that we can ensure full protection for our folks here in Washington, D.C., again, y'all, I keep coming with this solution, D.C. statehood. So when I say D.C., y'all say statehood. D.C. D.C. Period, because that is what our final rallying cry in this moment is. We need to be making the decisions for ourselves. We know right now that this takeover is illegal. It's unlawful. And shout out to the Attorney General for bringing that to light. Big shout out to Attorney General Brian Schwab for bringing this to light. Trump, as we know, is a felon. All right? So this right here is right up his mark, right? Because he continues to commit crime. And we say shame, 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 shame. Because there is no reason why our mayor and other elected officials aren't the final decision maker in the decision-making process right here in Washington, D.C. And I already stated this earlier this week. The facts are clear. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. And I gotta reiterate that one more time. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. Carjackings are down in Washington, D.C. And guess what, y'all? I also stand as a resident of Ward 1 in the U Street corridor. And my neighbors, the ones who are the most carjacked or cars broken into or stolen or what have you, are the ones who set up the 14th and V
So that was the Free DC rally outside of MPD headquarters earlier this afternoon before we learned the ruling from a DC court ruling against the Department of Justice attempting to replace Chief Pamela Smith. Like I told you earlier, DC's Attorney General and the mayor, they filed a lawsuit to temporarily block the Attorney General of the United States from placing the head of the DEA as an emergency police commissioner and granting him the powers of chief of police. Chief Pamela Smith will maintain command of the Metropolitan Police Department. Now, President Trump has not reacted to today's ruling because he was busy, a little busy. He was out in Alaska for a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. They were talking about a potential peace deal for the war in Ukraine. President Donald Trump apparently failed to secure any agreement, though, from Vladimir Putin, and he is now back on Air Force One on his way back to Washington. Right now, you're taking a live look at the DC police out in Navy Yard, where the juvenile curfew is in effect. Now, the National Guard had scheduled a briefing for 10 o'clock this morning. We told you that last night. That was canceled overnight, though. But officials with the DC National Guard did release some new information. They say 24/7 operations began today. 815 guardsmen are on duty here in the nation's capital. 680 of them are Army National Guard soldiers. 130 are from the Air National Guard. Those National Guard soldiers will not be armed, and they will operate their own tactical vehicles, not police cars. So they will be very visible as members of the National Guard. They also say the guardsmen are trained in de-escalation techniques. Right now, about 3 minutes ahead of 9:30, taking a live look at that picture from down at Navy Yard. We do have a lot of people who are tuned in on YouTube right now. I did want to read some of the comments. Just a reminder, this is live. I have no control over what people want to say, but Hobo Henry says, how can a police chief not understand the term chain of command? You rise to the rank of police chief, and it's news to you. Biney Alexander says, next is going to be New York City, please. What else? Viking shelters. These type of people, absolute clowns. Hobo Henry, why would we not want DC on neutral zone from politics? It seems to make sense. Tim B says, DC can never be a state. Tulip, we love Trump. Thank you to everyone who is watching and is weighing in. Just a reminder, please keep it clean. We want to be able to share what you think and say, but we want to keep it clean. So thank you to everyone. Tulip now saying, please come to Oakland. We're wrapping up our live coverage for tonight, but of course it's going to continue tonight at 10 over on Fox 5, 10, 11, then Jim Loke with the final 5 at 11:30. We're going to keep covering all of this for the duration of the 30 days that this federal takeover is supposed to be in effect. We'll be back with live coverage on Monday and throughout the weekend. For everyone who joined us tonight on Fox Local and here on YouTube, thank you so much. I'm producer Chris. We'll see you back here Monday night. In the meantime, tune in to Fox 5 for continuing coverage. Have a great weekend.
U.S. economy, but so far it looks like it's somewhat stalled here, and we'll have to wait and see how all these details get fleshed out. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin began their high-stakes summit with a handshake, but ended without a ceasefire in Ukraine.
I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up